America's greatest rock and roll band.
Aerosmith are the quintessential American hard rock and roll band.
Aerosmith are the ultimate and the epitome of American hard rock.
They call Aerosmith America's greatest rock and roll band because that's pretty much what they are.
They're known as America's greatest rock and roll band, and that's become legend, it's become tradition, it's become fact because it's legend and tradition.
Nobody really upped the ante in the way Aerosmith did and really, you know, got in your face and just projected themselves.
No other band has had quite such a ride, I don't think, and also it's hard to think of another band with quite the same longevity that Aerosmith have had in that process. Also, I think they encapsulate so many staples of music: rock, metal, R&B, blues, soul, even rap.
Everything that went before them is focused through them. Everything which has subsequently happened has come from them. So they are really the definition of American hard rock in all its colours, all its shades, the whole spectrum.
If you wanted to define American hard rock and roll at its best, then look at Aerosmith.
Aerosmith got signed to Columbia through basically gigging a hell of a lot in the Boston area, in that part of America. And I believe the deal they got was a fairly low-key one. And certainly when their debut album came out in 1973, it was called Aerosmith. And the whole attitude from the record label was one of indifference. In fact, the whole album was treated indifferently from beginning to end in a way. Amazing when you consider that debut had Mama Kin and Dream On, both of which have become classic Aerosmith standards subsequently, but at the time Columbia didn't either know what they had or care what they had.
Every time I look in the mirror, all these lines on my face getting clearer. The past is gone. Midnight, dust to dawn.
Dream On was the first single, and it was also the first of many Aerosmith ballads to become lodged in the public consciousness. But it wasn't a great success at the outset. It reached number 59 in the Billboard chart.
I sing we may sing for the year, sing for laughter, sing for the tear, sing we may it's just for the year, maybe tomorrow the Lord tell you
The other big track on the album, I guess, was Mama Kin, which was more a snapshot of what they became, in the sense that it was a hard rocking thing, but with a little bit of sophistication behind it. It wasn't just a thrash. And Stephen loved it so much that he actually went out and got a tattoo on his bicep with Ma Kin. You know, he loved it that much.
Keep in touch with Mama Kin.
Everything about it works. It's not their best album, and although it wasn't a huge seller, it was very much a really credible first album.
Get Your Wings didn't do much better as an album for Aerosmith than their debut, which was self-titled. In fact, Get Your Wings, their second album, came out in '74. Again, to a lot of indifference commercially, it didn't really chart, but it did have certain things going for it. One, it was the first time they worked with Jack Douglas, who was to be a crucial producer for them during the 1970s. Two, the songs on the album were tremendous. In fact, I'm still amazed to this day that Get Your Wings didn't do so much better than it did at the time.
Leave all the things that you love behind. I was leave all the things that I love behind. You of all the things that you love from tears, honey, that knowledge is there but the love. Voices scream, nightmares, reels the dream. Hey, Joe Perry!
Toys in the Attic was Aerosmith's third album, and this one really was the album that sort of blew the doors off for Aerosmith. Their rise up until that point had been slow and steady, the media very keen to write them off again as Stones copyists. But by the time they did their third album, people had started to realise that they were the real thing. And also by the time they did Toys in the Attic, they had a really good set of songs on that particular album, which they backed up live fantastically well.
Toys in the Attic, yeah, I mean, it completely defines Aerosmith, and it identified them as a band with their own signature sound. It just was loaded up with great songs as well.
The thing with Walk This Way is that it has this kind of bizarre tempo going on.
I believe that Walk This Way was unusual because I can't think of another band who were doing something similar. Any band who tried it, a white band, inevitably sounded like a white band doing a black style of music. Sure, you had people like James Brown who were doing that sort of scat, rap or whatever. However, what Aerosmith did is make it sound authentic. Hence the reason why a decade later Run DMC covered it and resurrected Aerosmith's career in doing so. But my favourite track on that album at the time was Sweet Emotion.
Sweet Emotion, probably the great Aerosmith song of them all. Everybody loves us. It's funky, it's loose, and it's also got Steven Tyler's greatest lyric and one of arguably the greatest line ever in the history of rock, which is, "A sweet talking mama with a face like a gent said my get up and go must have got up and went." How can you beat that?
Sweet talking mama with a face like a gent said my get up and go must have got up and went. Well, I got good news, she's a real good liar. Well, call her backstage and boogie, set your pants on fire. Likewise.
Toys in the Attic means pretty crazy, and that's what they were. They did have toys in the attic by their own admission. And it's funny, looking back on those albums, Tyler has said that They were doing an enormous amount of drugs at the time, to the extent that he listens to those albums now and he knows they were doing 30 or 40 takes of just about everything. He says when he listens to the albums now, he doesn't really so much hear the songs as hears the drugs that went into the songs.
Rocks is certainly the album that is regarded as the pinnacle of Aerosmith's achievement in the very important 1970s era. It is impossible to exaggerate how big an act they became in America as a result of that.
It started really strongly with Back in the Saddle and just kept going with Last Child, Rats in the Cellar, Combination, Licking a Promise. Those titles just roll off the tongue because they're great tracks.
Rocks is an album that vastly influenced bands like Guns N' Roses and that whole generation of bands that came out in the mid to late 80s. It's a hugely important slice of rock history.
Champagne, honey, meet you at your own damn game. Yeah. I said no dice, honey, I'm living on the astral plane. Hey. Well, my feet's on the ground, my head's going down the drain. Yeah. Well, heads are with tails you lose. Lord, it's such a crime. Nowhere to draw the line.
People often blame drugs for Draw the Line being such a mess, really. Joe Perry says of that period that they were no longer musicians dabbling in drugs. They were, you know, drug addicts dabbling in music, which, you know, is pretty true, I guess. And you can hear it on there, you know, it's a messy record.
Unfortunately, when they came to record Night in the Ruts, they did a short tour before they finished recording the album and had another bust up, and Perry finally decided to walk out.
An Aerosmith album without Brad Whitford and without Joe Perry especially, well, it's inconceivable, isn't it? But it really did happen. Permanent Vacation was the proper Aerosmith comeback album because it had some written to be hit singles on it, but it had vibrancy about it. It sounded like they were interested.
What they did do was swallow their pride and say, let's bring in outside songwriters to help. To make some of the songs more commercial or more viable for the MTV generation. And of course, Dude Looks Like a Lady was the first single from it and took off like a rocket.
It's one of those songs that you hear on the radio all the time. It's still very much in the public consciousness. It's never really gone away.
It really reinvented Aerosmith, I think, you know, for that period of time, which is what they needed.
This was Aerosmith back in the saddle. This was Aerosmith clean and sober and really rocking to a degree that they hadn't since the 70s.
Tell me that love is
Pump is just a superior version of Permanent Vacation, and in many ways it's, I suppose, in the pantheon of Aerosmith albums, you'd probably say of the modern era Aerosmith, it's far and away the best record of that, since they reformed.
I've often wondered if it had been written by an English guy called Love in a Lift, would it have had the same impact as Love in an Elevator? Something very stylistic and very rock and roll about American language sometimes as compared to British, which is maybe why Aerosmith are not a band we actually can emulate over here to a great extent.
She ain't got a gun. She ain't got a gun. Her whole world's come undone from looking straight at the sun. What did that do? What did I pursue you? They say when Janie was arrested, they found him underneath the chair.
Janie's Got a Gun, I think, is quite a serious song for Aerosmith, and basically it's about written by Tyler, about a girl who kills her father because he has been sexually abusing her.
Janie's Got a Gun got Aerosmith their first Grammy, and deservedly so. It's a very haunting song about a very serious subject.
Run away, go away. Run away from the...
Get a Grip really was all killer, no filler. You know, it was Aerosmith once again finding the stride that they'd had with rocks, I guess, for the first time. But on this occasion, they had no intention of throwing it all away by misbehaving. They really were in a position to become the greatest rock and roll band in America, if not the world.
Something wrong with the world today. I don't know what it is. Something's wrong with our eyes. Seeing things in a different way, and God knows it ain't his. Shower ain't no surprise. Yeah, we're living on the edge. What's that? Come on, baby, you can do better than that. Louder! Yes!
Living on the Edge is probably my favourite track on Get a Grip. I think it's the one track on the album that really does actually see Aerosmith being Aerosmith.
They just got into a formula. They knew that the big power ballads worked, so out they come, and it's just one after another. And they're not even bad songs, but it's not really Aerosmith, is it?
People look at Crying, they look at Crazy, they look at Amazing, and they say, oh, there's a plethora of ballads on this album. You know, they're accusing Aerosmith of selling out again. But, you know, keep up with the program, you know. They're not selling out, they never sold in. Dream On was what got us here in the first place with Aerosmith. Ballads have always been a very, very strong part of what they do. Without the money that they got from these ballads, there would be no pyro on the rock tracks, you know. They probably couldn't even afford guitar strings without the money that they made off of those ballads.
Aerosmith are the quintessential American hard rock and roll band.
It's taken Aerosmith about 3 decades of playing catch up to the Stones, but by virtue of the fact they're that little bit younger, I think they're the only real credible pretenders to the throne, I guess, of the Stones' greatest rock and roll band in the world tag, which, you know, on the right night, Aerosmith probably got that as well.
There's one thing that's for sure, that you know that if you pay for a ticket to see Aerosmith live, it's never going to sound anything other than great.
If you wanted to define American hard rock and roll at its best, then look at Aerosmith. If you wanted to point to one particular album to define what American hard rock has to offer, look at Rocks, because as Joe Perry says, it does.